What if the King of England had no choice but to sue his own son? That isn't a headline. Not yet, anyway. But over the past 72 hours, something has shifted inside the highest circles of the British monarchy, and not in a symbolic way. This time, it's legal. This time, it's personal. And this time, someone made a mistake they can't take back. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Because when Prince Harry walked into London's High Court earlier this week, flanked by a legal team and dressed in what looked like unshakable resolve, few expected the real drama wouldn't come from what was being argued in court, but from what he said under oath. One phrase, one sentence, maybe even just a few words. That's how it always begins. Not with an explosion, but a hairline fracture. And this particular fracture? It runs straight through the throne. Now, you're probably wondering. Wait, Harry's trial was supposed to be about the press, right? Phone hacking, illegal information gathering, all of that. Why would King Charles, his own father, suddenly be involved, let alone threatening legal retaliation? That's exactly the point. Because if the whispers from inside Clarence's house are to be believed, it's not about what Harry is fighting. It's about what he's revealing, or rather, misrepresenting, in the process. There are growing accusations that Prince Harry, in sworn testimony, said something that directly contradicts both past public statements and confidential royal documents. And if that's true, if Harry knowingly misled the court, then the royal family may have to make a choice no one ever wanted to see made. Protect the crown, or protect the bloodline. And here's where this gets deeply unsettling. Charles may have already made that decision. But before we get to that, we need to rewind. Not far, just a few months, maybe even a few days, back to when the Duke of Sussex was preparing for yet another return to the UK. Another face-off with the tabloids. Another public airing of grievances. The stakes were high. He knew that. He welcomed it. But what he didn't know, or didn't expect, was that this case wouldn't just drag the press into the spotlight. It would drag the palace with it. And somewhere between defending his right to privacy and weaponizing family pain for legal leverage, Harry may have crossed a line. So here's the question we're really asking. What did Prince Harry say in court that alarmed his own father's legal advisors? And more importantly, did he lie? Because if he did, and that lie was about the royal family, then this may not end with a judge's ruling. It may end with a royal reckoning. Now, let's be careful here. This is not a rush to judgment. Prince Harry has every right to pursue justice, especially if his private life was invaded without consent. That's a serious matter. And the British press, let's be honest, has a long history of crossing ethical lines. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being about press accountability. It became about something else. A moment in the courtroom, brief, easy to miss, when the tone shifted. Observers noticed it. Reporters scribbled faster. One aide, seated quietly behind a pillar near the gallery, reached for their phone and whispered something no one could quite hear. Later that afternoon, back inside Buckingham Palace, King Charles met privately with his lawyers. The official reason? Monitoring the legal strategy unfolding in court. The unofficial reason? Reviewing testimony that, if proven false, could not go unanswered. Not because it embarrassed the monarchy, not because it made Charles look weak, but because it was wrong. And not just wrong, damaging, deliberate, dangerous. But what was it? We'll get there. Because as you'll see in the chapters ahead, this isn't one of those quick-hit exposés where everything is laid out cleanly in the first 5 minutes. This is a slow unraveling, a web of timelines, private emails, conflicting statements, strategic silences, and somewhere at the center of it, a single contradiction that could crack the facade wide open. So, what makes this moment different from every other royal scandal? Why now? Well, for starters, it's not leaking from the tabloids. It's surfacing inside the courtroom. We're not dealing with anonymous sources throwing accusations into the wind. We're dealing with sworn affidavits, legal transcripts, witness lists, and that changes everything. See, Harry's legal battle with Associated Newspapers has always carried a certain emotional weight. This wasn't just about tabloid headlines. This was about trauma, about control, about reclaiming the narrative. But as the case unfolded, Harry's strategy took a sharp turn. He began referencing private royal events, moments behind palace walls, to establish a pattern of intrusion. To show how the press didn't just invade his world, but shaped and manipulated it. The problem? Some of those moments had already been described in his memoir, in interviews, even in Netflix specials, and the details weren't always consistent. In most legal battles, that would be brushed off. Human memory is imperfect, but in a royal context, where every word is parsed, every timeline double-checked, every silence weighed, that's a problem, especially when one of those inconsistencies suggests that a key member of the royal family, perhaps even the king, was complicit in something Harry now claims he never agreed to. And that is why Charles is furious. Not publicly, of course. He hasn't made a statement. He won't. But internally, his advisors are mobilizing. There's talk, quiet, serious talk, of legal intervention, of issuing a formal rebuke, of requesting court clarification, and yes, even of initiating litigation against his son if the testimony isn't corrected. Do you see how far this has spiraled? This is no longer about hacking. This is no longer about tabloids. This is about whether the monarchy itself is being used as a pawn in a much bigger, much riskier legal campaign. And for King Charles, who has spent his reign trying to stabilize a deeply fractured royal image, that's not just unacceptable. It's untenable. So here's where things start to tighten. Behind the scenes, there are documents, internal records that don't match what Harry testified to. And while none of this has been made fully public yet, legal insiders suggest the palace has already handed over certain communications to their lawyers, just in case they're needed. Because if the judge asks for clarification, and if the defense team moves to impeach Harry's testimony based on earlier statements, then we may see something no royal watcher ever expected. A monarch, not defending the crown from outside attack, but from his own son. Now, you might be asking, is that even possible? Can a king really take legal action against his child? Technically, yes. It wouldn't be the first time members of the royal family clashed in court. But it would be the first time a reigning monarch did so as sovereign, not as parent. And that, more than anything, reveals the magnitude of what's unfolding. Because the monarchy survives on illusion. The illusion of unity. The illusion of quiet strength. The illusion that behind the curtain, things are handled, resolved, kept within the family. But illusions only work until someone swears otherwise. So let's ask the uncomfortable question. What happens when a member of the royal family stands in court and says something under oath that the palace can prove isn't true? And what if that statement wasn't a mistake, but a strategy? We don't have the full answer yet. Not all the documents are public. Not all the depositions have been unsealed. But the pieces are falling into place. And as we walk through them in the chapters ahead, piece by piece, testimony by testimony, one thing will become painfully clear. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about strategy, about silence, and about the moment where even a father has to choose between the truth and his own child. But what came next would change everything. And no one, not even the king, saw it coming. You ever wonder how far someone will go before they realize they've burned the very bridge they're still standing on? That's where we begin. Because Prince Harry's crusade against the British press didn't start in that courtroom this week. It didn't start with this lawsuit. And it certainly didn't start because of one article or one headline. This has been building for decades. Quietly at first, almost invisibly, then louder, then explosive. And now it's weaponized. But let's back up. Not to childhood, not all the way to Diana's funeral. Let's start at the moment when Harry decided to sue. Because that decision, while wrapped in noble language, justice, privacy, accountability, carried something else underneath. Something more personal. Something vengeful. It wasn't just about protecting his family. It was about settling a score. The lawsuit was filed against Associated Newspapers, the publishers of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday. Accusations, illegal information gathering, phone tapping, theft of personal documents, bugging of private conversations. Harry, along with other high-profile claimants, alleged that this wasn't just journalism gone rogue. This was organized surveillance. Systematic. Relentless. And to be clear, that kind of invasion, if proven, is horrifying. It violates basic trust in media, in law, in public institutions. But here's where the tension starts to rise. Because the moment Harry decided to bring this fight back to the UK, to stand under oath in a British courtroom, with his family name echoing through the halls, he made a choice. not just to confront the press, but to relitigate his entire narrative. And the risk? He'd have to do it publicly, under scrutiny, without Meghan beside him this time. No polished Netflix cuts, no friendly interviewer, just the courtroom, the judge, the record. Was he ready for that? Some say yes, that this was his long-awaited stand, his chance to expose the corruption that helped destroy his mother, that turned his adolescence into tabloid fodder, that harassed Meghan into near collapse. Others say maybe, but not like this, because once he took that stand, Harry didn't just talk about surveillance. He opened the vault. He brought up private events, family communications, tensions that had supposedly remained behind closed doors, moments that, until now, had only been whispered about. So the question we need to ask, the question you should keep asking, is this: was Harry suing the press, or was he putting his entire past on trial? Because the way he framed things in court, the way he connected his trauma to the monarchy's inaction, to the press's collusion, to the events that spiraled around him, it wasn't clean, it wasn't linear, and most importantly, it wasn't always consistent. Let's take one example. During the first day of hearings, Harry stated, under oath, that he had no knowledge of a specific royal aide allegedly alerting the press to his and Meghan's location during their early courtship. He claimed he was shocked to discover this after the fact, that it felt like betrayal from within the institution, that it confirmed, for him, that the palace was feeding the press. But there's a problem with that, because back in 2021, in an interview with a well-known American outlet, Harry made an offhand comment about knowing how they operated back then. He said, quote, "It wasn't a surprise. We'd seen it before. The Rota system made sure of that. So which is it? Were you shocked? Or were you expecting it?" That might sound like a small detail, a throwaway inconsistency. But in court, under oath, nuance matters. Timelines matter. Intent matters. And the defense team picked up on it instantly. They didn't challenge it yet, not directly. But legal analysts watching the case say it's almost certain that line will reemerge. Possibly in cross-examination. Possibly as the foundation for an argument that Harry isn't a credible witness. And if that happens, if the judge begins to doubt the reliability of Harry's testimony, then the implications aren't just legal. They're royal. Because in order to build his case against the press, Harry is drawing from moments that involve his family. Private moments, meetings, conversations, decisions made behind palace gates. And by putting those details on the record, some allegedly without consent, he's cornered the monarchy. He's left the palace in a position where they either let the inaccuracies stand, or they correct them. And if they correct them, they may have to expose their version of events, which means turning over documents, communications, witnesses, and that could spark something far bigger than a phone hacking case. So why would Harry risk that? Why press so hard, knowing the backlash could reach his father, his brother, the very institution he once vowed to protect? Some say it's about principle, that this lawsuit is the final phase of his moral mission. To cleanse the rot, to speak truth to power, to show that not even the crown can shield wrongdoing. Others, they're not so sure. They point to the timing. Why now? Why this case? Why revisit all this again when he's already aired most of it in his memoir, in interviews, in that infamous Oprah sit-down? Was it really about justice? Or was it about control? See, Harry's relationship with the press is complex. Yes, he's been hounded, misrepresented, attacked. But he's also used the press to shape narratives, to promote causes, to launch media ventures. So when he stands in court and says he wants nothing more than to reclaim his privacy, that's complicated, especially when the very act of suing reopens the door. The courtroom becomes a stage. The transcripts become headlines. And the public, once again, becomes the jury. Only this time, some of them are starting to shift in their seats. Because what happens when the pursuit of justice starts to feel like a performance? When the testimony feels too curated, too rehearsed, or worse, too contradictory? That's where this case is starting to turn. The emotional weight is still there. The pain is real. No one denies that. But emotion doesn't win trials. Facts do. And if those facts don't align, if Harry's recollections differ from what's already been published, filmed, or confirmed, then he's not just risking this lawsuit. He's risking the last shred of credibility he has with the institution he left behind. And somewhere behind the courtroom doors, King Charles is watching, quietly, legally, and according to insiders, furiously. Because one of the claims Harry made, and we'll get to it in detail in the next section, directly implicates the palace in something it says never happened. And if that claim is proven false, if Harry lied, or even appears to have misled, the palace won't just issue a statement. They'll respond legally, and that would be unprecedented. Because if the king's legal team moves forward, then the courtroom Harry hoped would be a sanctuary of truth could become a battlefield, and he may find himself facing not just the press, but the crown itself. And here's where the pressure really begins to build. Because think about the position Harry's now put himself in. He's no longer just the plaintiff. He's the storyteller, the narrator, the man asking the court and the public to believe his version of reality. And for someone who's spent years criticizing how the media distorts narratives, that's a dangerous reversal.